Hi there, and welcome to episode 178. Apparently, we've done this once before and it didn't work, of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown, the man whose pathetic spine makes him about as flexible as an arthritic millipede, and I'm joined, as usual, by Dr. Alex Connor, who is flexible enough to switch from, roast boar to pheasant without much distress.
Ding.
And sadly, we'll take it, ding. We are still without Mrs AuDHD, who's thinking about how to rest and how to add some flexibility to a usual routine of work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Alex, hi.
Mystic with a bump and flexibility cognitively.
Fucking hell. What the fuck?
Flexible cognition.
Flexible cognition. It's been a while since you brought that one, and actually, I kind of enjoyed it, to be honest, Alex. But just in the future, just a future
That's
reference.
Stockholm syndrome right there.
Yeah, just a future reference. No. Anyway, how are you? Something?
No. I'm excellent, thank you. Excited to be here. We had a brilliant pre-review about our book, ADHD Unpacked, that I came up with coming out in March. That I came up with the name of, James, as you well know, that said...
Fucker.
People might not know that we argued for ages about who came up with the idea of doing a podcast, and then we scrolled through WhatsApp and found out that, contrary to my absolute belief and memory, it wasn't me. But I did come up with the name of this book. Maybe. The review said it uses, rabbit ears for you, James, considerable care and humour, which is weird because that's two of our least likely and common attributes.
So true.
One of whom has sent us a letter?
One of considerable care. Anyway, was that all just to say that we got a book coming out in March? Because that's a long way off to start this sort of guerrilla marketing, I suppose you'd call it, isn't it?
Publishers making us release a press release now for a March release. They might as well have said it's a million years away. to everybody who's going to buy it, be interested in it, and us.
Hi, Murray.
That's right. Hi, Murray. Oh, man. That's right. It's a paper. It's a letter from... I'll just quickly check. You know, it's always the same piece of paper I use. I mean, it isn't, because it's a different letter from heaven, stroke, not heaven, each time. It says, I listened to your last episode on processing speed and thought you should know, this is one of my favourite ones, and thought you should know that you forgot to talk in the psychoeducation about the vast numbers of people with other processing disorders that are comorbid with ADHD, from dyslexia to autism and dyscalculia. That's quite a glaring and unprofessional error. I processed even that mistake from down here. Also, James is a thick Dracula or whatever. It's true, Robert.
It is really.
I just forgot to mention it. And yeah, and it's like a big thing, isn't it? I bet there was loads of ADHD people going, that bit isn't my ADHD, you utter knobheads. Apologies. Thanks. We've had a real letter. Can I read it out? Yes, you can. Excellent. It's from whatever you want it to be. It's literally who it says it's from. And it says, hi all, some sort of klaxon warning. I just wanted to say that the only thing that stopped me from driving into a tree today was your three voices natching away on an old episode of the podcast. I know that sounds improbable and you maybe expect the opposite. That's a good line. But I felt so isolated and alone. You made me laugh whilst reading out that bit. Thanks a lot, whatever you want it to be. I felt so isolated and alone that I just pressed play on any old episode and immediately felt like there was somebody there that understood. I love this community for that, and the three of you in particular, or I resent you for stopping me from finally following through on a task. Wow, dark. How do I keep forcing myself to get out of bed every day? Why bother? How do you do it when it doesn't feel like anything is ever going to get better? Why bother? I know it's transient, but so is the 5 seconds of not feeling like shit per month. Anyway, for whatever tiny bit of worth I have, thanks for putting yourselves out there to give a little bit of light in a whole footload of darkness. Thank you for writing that. It's genuinely meaningful.
I think we both feel that way ourselves this week, don't we, as well?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a shit week.
It has.
But there is light, isn't there?
Has. Well, there is in this room. Other than that, I'm not sure.
I texted James to say, can we record the podcast today? Because I need a bit of like a bit because it's the thing I really love doing. And James is involved, which feels wrong. Ding.
Ding. Anyway, this ass cleaning one purchased from wish.com of a podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts.
I googled what that was because of ass cleaning.
Have you
It's
se-
exactly what you think it is. Yeah.
It is, yeah. But Dad one didn't use it. We choose a theme. Last time round was about ADHD, and when he was ill, obviously not as a birthday
Right,
present.
okay,
or something.
because yeah, your forgetfulness might have been set in, but surely not that much. I was thinking, do I have to? Lots of people listening will be going, yeah, because
Yeah. And where were we? Anyway, last time around, we something processing speed, and this week we're going to be discussing ADHD and cognitive
yes.
flexibility. I don't think that person suggested the topic because that may have been from the last script. But if you did suggest this topic and last week's topic, Amelia, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a coincidence, isn't it? Almost as if you just forgot to take out thanks to Amelia for suggesting the topic.
Possible, isn't it? Anyway, the 3 parts, as usual, include the third chuckle brother of evidence, Alex the Psycho, education
now.
monkey. Oh God, yeah, one of them chuckled off, didn't they? Yeah. Anyway, talking about the evidence, and in part 2, we'll give our personal reflections and maybe something approaching but on actually being a tip on cognitive flexibility, not processing speed. And then we'll answer some of your questions sent in the final question because, well, So, Alex, give us a flex about how much you know about cognitive flexibility. I'm so sorry about that gag. Again, that's 2 weeks in a trot.
2 weeks, about 7 of shit puns. I think you're revealing your true personality. You'll be doing kind things for me on air soon.
Never.
Right, as you all know, everyone with ADHD is quick thinking, adaptive, creative, thinks outside the box. Only joking. Or am I? Yes, I am. Or am I though? Am I what? I've forgotten. What are we doing? Cognitive. Yes, as we've mentioned many times, executive function problems sit at the heart of ADHD, if not in the diagnostic criteria, because they're often not, apart from attention, which is also an executive function. But those abilities to adapt and create.
Sorry, I would look at my watch and I don't know why because it's locked, but you've just broken a record there for completely fucking my what about ADHD question within, I think it's the second paragraph of psychoeducation?
Hush, James, grown up talking. So cognitive flexibility is an executive function. It's critical. And what it means is the mental ability to shift perspectives, to adapt to new or unexpected conditions, responding to changes in like the dynamic environment of a human, modern life and caveman life and a fishing upon its all dynamic environments. Modern life, James, that's after the 19th century. And also not being undead. Is that the right word? Is that what your community say? Livingly challenged. Are you part of the Red Fang gang? Is that what do you say? I don't know what the.
I was when I was younger, yeah.
You might have heard the term cognitive flexibility used or called creativity, or sometimes set shifting, or mental flexibility. And this is a core component of how we adapt to change and how we adapt to a situation to make complex decisions in general.
You didn't start with the usual joke about cognitive flexibility is defined in the something dictionary.
I love the fact that you can't name a dictionary. That's
not a single one.
Merriam-Webster, I usually do. Yeah.
Okay.
No, James, I'm not that predictable. Anywho, cognitive flexibility has been defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. You fell for my foolish plan. I think you'll find, James, I defined cognitive flexibility about 90 seconds ago, but just for you, I'm going to read this in the sort of voice I would use for a particularly old person. Cognitive flexibility allows us to transition between thinking about different concepts or to revise the approach we're doing, not stick on one path, often based on feedback from ourselves or from others or from the environment, and to adopt new strategies when the old ones are ineffective. This is creativity and thinking outside the box, really. There are, however, broadly two types of cognitive flexibility. Short, but still boring list, Klaxon. A, reactive flexibility. So that's unexpected events or shifts in what your plans are. So if someone says, right, the meeting at 10 is now at 9 or 11, we have to adjust to that quickly without losing productivity, without losing our shit as well. And 2, spontaneous flexibility, similar, but that's generating multiple approaches or like what are several solutions to a problem. And this is closely related to the idea of creativity and problem solving, and it enables us to explore various perspectives without rigid adherence to a single path, which is what I do. Within reactive and spontaneous flexibility, there is a sub-boring list. Are you ready?
Yeah. No.
Alpha, switching between tasks or mental sets. A set is like a group of things you're working on in brain language. I don't know, you're the scientist. This refers to the ability to move smoothly from one activity or concept or approach to another. Task switching is absolutely especially important in multitasking environments where you have to switch constantly, and that's required to manage lots and lots of things. 2, adjusting your behavior when there is new information coming in. Get feedback, get new information. You've got to reassess your choices and change course if you think it's necessary. C, perspective taking, social adaptability. If you're going to be cognitively flexible, you've got to think, what are the other people seeing and feeling and wanting and expecting here? What does this look like from somebody else's perspective, and what does it feel like? This is an essential skill in social interpersonal interactions and in goals that are for a wider audience. Delta D, don't know, problem solving and innovation. Flexibility allows us to view a challenge from different angles and come up with innovative solutions rather than relying on rigid methods we've always used.
I don't know if you finished. I'm just typing. I wasn't really paying attention. Have you finished?
Yeah, well, you say finished. What I have done is created a pause while you say, what does
Yes.
that mean in normal language, Alex?
Yeah, I knew that was coming up, but I suddenly realised I didn't have a pen or paper or anything written down in any format for me to make notes for my personal reflections, which I've just realised need to be updated. So I thought I'll quickly type it on the same computer I'm recording a podcast on, whilst putting you off screen, so I can just hear you Toxeter accent. My brain is not. My brain
really
is
isn't,
not
is it?
at its
You
best
just got
this morning.
distracted and started typing something else.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing,
Anyway,
right?
It is. So anyway, in normal language, what's that mean, Alex? For God's sake.
Well, what it means, James, is I genuinely never thought I'd say this. I wish Sam was back asking questions because yours are shit.
Yeah.
It means that in everyday life, being flexible, cognitive flexibility is evident in any activity that needs rapid adjustment, adaptation. If you've got a busy schedule in your life, we know what that means in any professional home life. Handling any events that were unplanned or unexpected, balancing the personal and professional side of life, all of that requires us to shift priorities and course fluidly.
So,
Yeah.
apropos those aspects, you little fucking sneak in and change the script bastard. We have to be flexible because of the Brobdingnailian nature of our
Read it.
task list. Brobdingnailian.
Yeah. It was the answer to the crossword clue the other day in the Times, I think, and I really liked it. I thought, I'll stick that in for James. It means big.
Right.
I've written in the script. Yes, exactly, James. We do have to be flexible because of the Brobdingnailian nature of our task list. But I've written yes, exactly, assuming you read that out. Absolutely, yes. We need to be flexible because we have a big task list. I don't know why you didn't just say that. Yeah. And some examples of what we have to be flexible about. And I am aware that just like last week, again, Team AuDHD might be shouting at us right now. But honestly, these are also things that ADHD people without autistic diagnosis can struggle with. Promise. This includes third boring list klaxon of the day. In the workplace, a flexible mindset allows smooth transitions between the tasks that we're expected to do and not just freezing between tasks or struggling to stop and start another one. It helps us collaborate with other people, which is part of what we have to do. On my CV, it actually says not a good team player. And it allows us to collaborate with people with different personality types because we can read them.
Don't you write your own CV? You've put not a good team player on your
Thought it was
own
important
CV.
for people to know from the outset. I'm self-employed. It also allows especially quicker adaptation to changes in when a project changes or clients or deadlines change, all of that. Family life, same thing really, adapting to family members' needs. We're not all one big family, even though if you're in a neurodivergent family, they have more traits similar. Everyone's blooming different. One of my brothers doesn't like coffee revels, absolute savage. Flexibility helps in adapting to family members' needs. Household schedules, we still have to do them, even though they're bloody awful. Spontaneous events happen. Oh, where's me bloody PE kit? I've got to go and run around the building today. And that's just you, James. Unexpected illness you have to respond to, changes in any family plans and their expectations are different. And finally, C. I often say delta for both D, 4, and 3 because it's the third one of the Greek alphabet. So epsilon, and in academic or learning environments. You remember that. Anyone that's ever been to school knows that students approach problems in new ways and study strategies don't work and they shift and they change, and adapting to the demands of different subjects, different teachers, different assessments, different peers. Oh my God, it's awful. And we have to be flexible cognitively.
We should. I should also point out that we've never, ever had more correspondence than about the coffee revels. Alex, we had literally 6 people say either coffee revels are shit or one person said coffee revels are the best. And that means effectively we've now got evidence that coffee revels are shit anyway. I suppose we should get to the ADHD bit.
What I really like about it is not one of them said it was subjective. So it's an absolute fact, which I agree with.
It is an absolutely objective fact. They're shit. So anyway, crack on with ADHD, mate.
Okay. All right, Bob. Well, for once, and I can't say this enough, cognitive flexibility has been well studied in ADHD. Und? I went German, Birmingham. Und. Oh, I could try that. Oh,
The German market.
Yeah. Und die Mehrheit von die Vorgegangen gefunden. That's the majority of previous findings. I didn't know I knew that. That's interesting. I'm tired. Right, I'll start again. Yes, there's findings, and most of them think and see that there are observed substantial impairments. On average, you don't have to. You can be amazing if you've got ADHD, no problem. But on average, we tend to have impairments in cognitive flexibility relative to non-ADHD peeps in the GEMPOP. Even before all of this research, researchers hypothesized, James, that as attention and Rika, that's just because I like the word hypothesize. I pretend James doesn't know what it means. That's the joke there. That as attention and recall of information are main factors for cognitive flexibility. It's fairly obvious that it's going to be an issue for most probably people with ADHD, if not all of us. And they were right. Go science for once. In ADHD, the issues with cognitive flexibility are common, probably not that surprising. There's a recent meta-analysis. Once again, a reminder, that's one of the good big papers that looks at all the other papers, decides which one's more powerful and comes up with an idea. The recent meta-analysis, get this, agreed with previous findings. Literally not said that before in 178 episodes. And found that patients with ADHD were less able to demonstrate cognitive flexibility. I'm trying to be positive. But we're creative. I've seen it so often. And it's literally talking about cognitive flexibility. We've known this for decades. I'm not going to go there. Not my job.
Calm, Alex. It's your job to poorly deliver psychoeducation.
Did it ham-fistedly deliver your psychoeducation, monkey? Stop making comments. we're less able to demonstrate cognitive flexibility compared to non-ADHD controls. And importantly, reduced activation in the brain regions associated with cognitive flexibility. We've got fMRIs and EEGs on this. Then we have, checks notes, challenges in problem solving. We're problem solvers, James. Despite us all being creative, genius, entrepreneurial, freaking problem solvers, adults with ADHD will struggle to come up with alternative solutions if they're on a path, or may approach problems from the same angle repeatedly. I mean, it feels like a burn. Get out of my brain, you knob. The script we wrote. So approaching problems from the same angle repeatedly and not stopping, it's something that psychiatrists are taught to look for in the diagnosis, even when that approach proves ineffective. Not all the science agrees. This is partly down to something James and I are always chatting about. Not all science is equal. A pilot study in 20 people reporting that turmeric improves ADHD is a fact. But, statistically speaking, if you want to be one of them knobheads, probably not as valid as a randomized controlled trial of 1,000 people, which shows the opposite. Knowing which papers to trust and which to be more critical of, you have to be critical of all of them, obviously, but knowing which ones have more energy, more power, more validity is what James and I do, so you don't have to. In brackets, what James does, and I go, that looks about correct, because I find it really boring. And fuck me, some papers are bad and also boring. What was I talking about?
I don't know, because again, I started making notes halfway through, but you're right. There's so much bad science out there where people will draw conclusions from a pilot study or a feasibility study where you're not meant to even draw conclusions from it and say, yes, this means that.
Yeah, and they say, don't they? This is only a pilot, but fact. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
That other studies. One interesting study reported that our cognitive flexibility isn't in fact reduced, but our cognitive confidence was. I like that, but it only looked at 42 people. And as if to make our point, and therefore isn't enough to refute the hypothesis, James, that cognitive flexibility is impaired in ADHD. I like the idea of cognitive confidence, and that's a danger as well. When a paper of only 42 says something you find interesting and powerful and makes you feel smug in front of people, be really careful with confirmation bias. I have to. When I find a paper that fits what I want, I can often then stop looking for one that doesn't. And that's our job not to do that. So it's easy for everybody. That's why we vote like idiots. Another, admittedly small study found that adults with ADHD could have difficulty understanding situations as controllable. So knowing you've got control over a situation. So difficulty considering multiple solutions for difficult situations if you don't think that there is a solution. Do you know what's weird? When James, when they do the conundrum on Countdown, which is a program for old people who like maths and words, I often, when the buzzer goes and someone gets it, I get it then because I'm aware suddenly that it's gettable.
Weird.
Which is understanding that the situation is controllable, and that's what I mean. So if someone tells you, "Oh, this is gettable," you can get it. But if I don't think it's gettable, I won't even try. And this is that. That's what this means. Is it controllable? Or is there any justification in looking for multiple multiple solutions if there isn't one? I really like that. So that is a lack of cognitive flexibility. There are many, many, many more studies and really interesting neurophysiology ones which go into the why this might be.
Just before I read that, the next thing in the script, I've been holding this in for ages, and it's just to say that in the past, and this isn't even a joke, when I've messaged Alex and said I've got a theory about something, he's replied with one word, hypothesis, just to annoy me.
Sometimes I put an asterisk, don't I?
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, don't just the tip me, Alex. Things like what? Really interesting neurophysiology, things like what?
I'm doing the kind of closed mouth shut mimic with my hand at the moment. Mimic, Alex, getting German. Right, yes, good question. Unsurprisingly, James, prefrontal cortex, the PUFCA. I think we've established that last time, didn't we? The PUFCA is fundamental to this. There's a paper that found changes in early life, like neurodivergent people have, and in later life, like with dementia, that can also affect the PUFCA. and that all of those things compromise cognitive flexibility. Brains. It's brains, isn't it?
Brian Brains, by any chance?
Brian Brains, yeah.
So why is, if this is important, why is it?
Why is cognitive flexibility a key issue in ADHD? Is that what you mean? The thing that
Yeah.
We need this in everyday life. If you've got smooth transitions from one task to another, if you've got to manage those multiple priorities, responding to changes in real time, all of that is cognitive flexibility, uses the prefrontal cortex, and it would appear that ours is disturbed or damaged or disordered, if you like the word. If you're cognitively flexible, it's a contribution to resilience, because people can adapt to adversity and we can view setbacks from different perspectives and move forward in a constructive and healthy way. And of course, as we hear all the time on slick, professionally produced podcasts, unlike this one, that weren't recently reviewed as, what is the point of this podcast? That's a review we actually got amongst, I feel I should have had thousands of amazing 5-star positive ones, but we look for the bad ones and read them out. What is the point of this? That's which we have asked. So on all of those other podcasts, do you know what they say? We're more resilient. And measures of resilience is a word that we think is a character trait of positive value, but actually what it is a measure of privilege. That's what resilience is. And people say that people with ADHD are more resilient, but the reality is, on average, we're not. Some of us are. I think it's the ones with good ADHD. So, lack of cognitive flexibility is a lack of adaptation to adversity and struggling to add context when we get setbacks and thinking this is the setback forever. It can be a barrier to progress in pretty much all areas, really. If you've got altered cognitive flexibility, it is one of the most critical aspects of ADHD that correlates with having coexisting mental health problems. It's chicken and egg, remember, of which comes first? We don't know. Cognitive flexibility, what we know is it's an essential executive function for adaptability and problem solving, being creative and being resilient in the face of change. All of the things that we hear are anecdotally ADHD people are brilliant at, and yet which rely on an executive function that most of us struggle with in reality.
So true. And what can we, and by the way, I very specifically don't mean you and I, do about it?
People who are better than us. Maybe stop saying we're all resilient, creative problem solvers, maybe, but just,
Done.
I get it. I get the positivity. It's good. But if it isn't true, it makes me feel bad about myself that I'm not one. And realizing that I'm not very resilient and I'm not, sometimes I get stuck on the path and therefore I'm not using my creative superpower. It makes me feel terrible about myself and that I'm not just ADHD, but I'm shit as in general. And so be positive about it. Understand why we get stuck. Instead of saying we're creative, say that we're tenacious sometimes, or other times not tenacious. It depends on just try and not make shit up for selling bullshit books. Read our bullshit book instead. Anywho, you're not going to like this, James.
No.
Exercise helps. Science fact.
No thanks.
There is evidence that exercise, and that's true not just in ADHD, but for everybody, it can improve cognitive flexibility. The studies on this aren't strong, and the ADHD one's tiny, but it makes sense, doesn't it? In theory, there's evidence from loads of studies that executive functions improve with even moderate exercise in the general population. But a tiny study in ADHD found that too. Unsurprisingly, probably medication, if you can tolerate it, if you're lucky enough to take it, or if you're lucky enough to get somebody contacted me on the thing that I don't use anymore, the Trumpian dystopian bird-based nightmare, asking if anybody knows how they can get methylphenidate in the UK, and I don't have an answer. If you can get that medication from within 50 miles or 80 kilometers, James, we do know that medication improves cognitive flexibility on average in general studies. It doesn't have to affect yours. And there are significant positive effects of methylphenidate across all doses, so probably almost certainly Lisdex as well. So there we are, James. Adapt to that when you're filming your next Deliveroo advert, James, whatever you do.
I can't tell you the amount of times somebody's messaged with a picture of that Deliveroo advert saying, "Oh my God, yeah, you've got a side hustle." And the first 50, were funny. So now when it comes on and Sam and I are at home watching television, I'll just go, "Oh, for fuck's sake."
If
And
you're not
she'll
aware of
say,
it, there's
"Oh,
a Deliveroo advert that not only has it got a Dracula in, it actually does look like James.
yeah."
And
That's
you
what
know how
Bond
I
was.
spend a lot of my life just trying to annoy you, even when you're not there?
Mm, mm,
People send
mm.
me, without copying you in,
Amazing.
pictures of it. So they're doing the same thing now. We've created a community of people that abuse you even when you're not there. Ding.
Doing Salt Bay. Anyway, let's get to the break so we can get back to, so I can tell you what notes I was writing down to completely change my personal reflections. So see you in a bit.
Bye. No.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
Welcome back to episode 178 of the ADHD Adults minus AuDHD Mrs. We are talking about cognitive flexibility. This is part 2, where we do personal reflections and tips for cognitive flexibility.
Mm.
Can we do that? We can do personal reflections. James, you absolutely fucked up the first half by writing some what are going to be incredible personal reflections, presumably. So hit it.
Yeah, so what I had written was that, as with last week, generally not an issue for me. But I've now realised that's probably poor metacognition because
It really is.
while you were reading, I was typing down two things which I really struggle with, and one's the social adaptability bit. So seeing things from other people's points of view, I can't, Al. If people don't think like me, if people don't act like me, particularly when it comes to kind of kindness and generosity and being there for someone, I genuinely don't understand it. I can't compute it if people aren't like me. And of course, luckily, not many people are like me, but I didn't realize that was
That was odd.
cognitive flexibility. I just assumed it was, I don't know, that I've got these ridiculous standards I hold other people to, but it's just because I don't get why you wouldn't be kind or accommodating or whatever
Why would you
positive
vote
things
for an
I'm trying to
actual
pretend.
rapist?
Yeah, exactly that. And then the other thing you said, which immediately made me reach to type something down, was following the same angles repeatedly, without changing them. I do that so often. I mean, with everything, with health habits, with work, just thinking, right, okay, I'll try it again, even though it's failed 100 times before. And there's a bit of positive illusory bias in there, but there's clearly also the lack of cognitive flexibility to accept that I need to think of something new, because this isn't working. Another thing you said, which I made a note about, which is really important, is about the fact that we might not see that something's controllable. And that comes back to partly to do with our productivity, because we often don't realize we have the autonomy to make changes with things at work. So when it comes to putting in boundaries, when it comes to being able to say no, many people, I mean, some people work in jobs where
Yeah.
they can't, but many people don't realize they have an element of control
Oh
over
God,
these
good,
things.
great point. It's an amazing point. Really brilliant. I hate to say that about you, obviously.
I know. I was shocked into silence when you said
Yeah.
it. Beyond that, the stuff that I'd written before I had these revelations was that I generally handle change well. And you have to, living with Sam, to be honest. And that's a wonderful way of showing either that A, we're all different, we don't all have the same issues, or more likely B, I don't have any metacognition and in fact massively fucking struggle with this in multiple domains of life. And I think I'm now thinking it's probably B.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is inappropriate. I haven't asked you if I can say this, but there's a
Mm.
difference between handling change well and purposefully detaching from caring about either so you don't have to deal with change.
Yeah,
So,
I'm still not sure. Anyway, I've got a tip. I'm going to give it anyway, whether you want it or not. It's not very
ding, ding,
good,
ding.
obviously.
No.
Yeah, and it's to be honest with yourself. I think there's no shame in having ADHD, other than the
Yeah.
massive shame that society pours on top of us for having ADHD. So if you are cognitively inflexible, it's okay. It doesn't make you a worse person. It just makes some things a bit more difficult. And if you want to lean into and believe the positive messages that we're creative, that we can do all the things that that cognitive flexibility drives, and therefore most of us struggle with. That's absolutely fine. But as Alex said, maybe, just maybe, don't tell everybody that everyone with ADHD is all those things, because we're not. We're diverse as a neurodivergent group. So that's my collection of little tips. Ding. Alex, what about you?
I'm quite a clever person, I reckon, on average. I've had
I'd say you're
there's
averagely clever.
evidence. Yeah. I think that isn't the same thing. That's what my personal reflection is. That isn't the same as cognitively flexible. What I'm not is very resilient. I struggle to see that a bad thing isn't cataclysmic because of emotional dysregulation. I have an inappropriate reaction to small setbacks that can hit me hard. So admitting you're not resilient feels shameful because, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. If I have to, I used to want to be able to draw. So I saw my brother draw a Garfield, and there's a key to how you do it. And that's what I would do. And it would never occur to me to do it differently. I'm still only able to do that. I couldn't even, open the mouth of the cat. Or I don't have that. I stick on a path and that's it. That's how it is. I have the same lunch every day. It makes... I just don't think about changing. One of the reasons I'm able to be sober, I think, is because my path is sobriety. I don't even think about it. It's not like day at a time, really. I have to watch out for when something crazy happens and I get sad and I want to drink or do drugs, and that's just what I have to keep an eye out for. But day to day, I don't do that, so I don't do it. Like a path. There are different types of this, aren't there? Different types of resilience, different types of creativity, different types of cognitive awareness. I do read people really, really well. I read their emotions. I do see things from everybody's side. I don't feel it though, and that I think that's why that's a slightly different issue. I think you and I are creative. I surprised myself that people think we're funny sometimes, occasionally, but only in certain ways, and that it's like a path. When I'm writing a book or scripts or anything like jokes, I do it like it's a conversation, and that's processing. It's not cognitive flexibility. It's really interesting that you've got to have a look at yourself and say, okay, what are my cognitive flexible areas that I could work on with exercise, but also I just need to acknowledge that they might make me feel bad about myself, and that seeds into the tip.
I was about to say that's a tip. You said you might not have a tip. I think that's a tip. I can see your tip, Alex. Ding.
As I was saying, I thought James is looking at my tip here, and he's not impressed. That's what it is. If you can see what you're good at, build on that. If you can see what you struggle with, just acknowledge it and try not to build too many things that require that level of resilience, flexibility. You're probably like me, resilient in other areas. I'm often resilient once the thing's happened. It's the anticipation of it I get crippled by really badly, and so I freeze. That classic thing, isn't it, of the ADHD shuffle. Do I do A or do I do B? So you start to shuffle from left to right, not doing anything. But when the actual change happens, I'm often fine. It's the fear of it. So the tip is it's literally your tip, James. Ding.
My tip, it is, isn't it?
Be aware of it and don't feel shame. It's the same one. I don't think there is another one really, right? But it's
no, probably not.
We have to be.
Yeah, it's a mono. Yeah, it's a monotip subject. Anyway, Alex, have you got time for a game per se?
No, be flexible about that. No.
Anyway, this happened last night. I'm down in the beautiful cathedral city of, where is it? Canterbury.
Amazing.
And exactly the same thing happened last night as happened when I went to Brighton last week. That needed to charge the car, couldn't find any chargers. Horrible, horrific journey. Didn't get here till late. Found my way to the hotel, which has a car park like 5-minute walk away. Got to check in and realised I'd forgotten something. So, as usual, Alex, 3 options. Had I, and this is all after I'd got out of the car, by the way, had I left my car keys on the roof of the car? That's option 1. Option B, had I left my wallet on top of the little ledge on the pay machine to pay for the parking? Or option 2, Did I leave my case behind the back of the car when I closed the boot?
Oh, that's good. I like it. I don't think it's the keys, because you never leave your keys anywhere, because you need them for your little key exchange parties you have wherever you go.
I thought you were going to
I
suggest
don't.
but I'm using it for a bump then for some reason.
Is that what people do?
Occasionally, yeah. If you're a monster and you haven't got a Jesus, let's not go into how to
No, let's.
how to insufflate illegal substances.
I don't think it was. What was the second one?
Wallet.
Oh, it's not the wallet, because anytime you open the wallet, moths come out and you'd see them, you'd remember it. I think, hey, 1990s joke. So you left your case behind. You left it by the car.
So you went, I don't know, 50 episodes without getting one right, and you've now
Yeah.
got 2 right in the space
Boom.
of 2 episodes. Yeah. Yes, Alex. I got to reception, and just when she said, "Okay, your room's room 19," I went, "Where's my case?" And she went, I don't know. And I thought, what? Hang on. Fuck. And then had to retrace, running as fast as somebody who smokes as much as I do can, back to the car. And there it was, luckily in pitch dark, just left there behind my car with
It's
my
shocking, isn't it?
with my MacBook in, with my iPad in, with my meds in, with all my clothes in, with everything I need to do this talk tonight. And the panic, as you can imagine, was great. Anyway, Alex is starting to bring the score back, but we're still going to do a whatever it is, all quits at the end of the season. We'll take a break and we'll be back to answer some of your questions. That's your questions, not our questions, in part 3. See you in a bit.
I know.
Welcome back to part 3 of episode 178 of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we're covering ADHD and cognitive flexibility. As usual, in this part, we ham-fistedly answer questions that you, not us, have asked. So, Alex, do you have a question?
I do, James. I've got a question from Kaya. And do you notice anything about that question from Kaya, James? Anything? Do you notice anything about that?
Fuck.
You have one job.
And there's one from Dr. Wanadu as well. Fuck. She even messaged me to say thank you for reading my question out.
And a question from mine, Brian, and so is my wife. So the questions we got, James, the questions in the script are, and I can't stress this enough, the same ones as last week, are they? Do you want me to read them out and we answer them differently? What do you want me to do? I had somebody ask me, why do you have breaks in a small podcast? And then they went, I did ask that, and then I realised that it's to separate the different bits, and it wouldn't work without them. So you can't even answer that. What are we going to do, James?
I don't know. I sent you a paper. Well, so instead of, obviously, listen, we could pause this. I could spend time going and finding some new questions, but let's face it, that's not going to happen.
No.
So instead, thinking on the fly with my creative, flexible brain, I've sent you a couple of interesting papers recently. Are any of them worth talking about as a weird part 3, talking about new papers?
Yeah, and what, like, we could pose. This is a question from Made Up, from Kidderminster. And it says, why was that recent really big meta-analysis type paper? Why did that say that ADHD in adults is between 1.5% and 4.9%? Why is that different? I'd have to remember the paper. Can you remember why we've got those different numbers?
I can. So there was a really nice paper. So you'll often see people, including us, say that somewhere between 2 and 5%, probably close to 3%, of all adults have ADHD. And it's impossible to ever know what the true number is, because obviously most people are undiagnosed. There are different healthcare systems in different countries. But what this paper did, which was really clever, was it looked in different populations. So it looked in a population where you base it on medical records, and then it looked in populations of clinical studies where you would look, in wider populations, etc. And what they found was, depending on the population you look in, the number changes. So the lower end of that scale was when you look at medical records. And one of the reasons that was low is, for example, medical records include children under the age of 2 who can't be diagnosed. And medical records also include all the fucking people waiting for a diagnosis or who haven't got a diagnosis because they don't know they've got it. So that's why the lower end of that scale is there, and then the higher end, which is more reliable.
They look for that, don't they? It's not just, presumably it's not just looking at people who are diagnosed. It's people who are looking diagnosed compared with people they've seen or something like that, is it? Or because it can't just, because 2% of people aren't diagnosed, are they? It's much lower.
No. No, they're not. But again, if you look in America, for example, where it's much higher, and
Yeah.
compare all those different geographical
I
areas for
see, and they
medical
include America in
records,
this, do they?
yes, then you come out with 1.9%, which is clearly going to be too low, like I say, because most of the countries, most people aren't diagnosed. The higher numbers came from more robust studies where you're looking at clinical trials, for example, with very large numbers of people, where you can at least extrapolate that when you've got a nationally representative sample to a number that's more realistic. So that 5% end of that 2 to 5% is probably closer to it.
I really think 2.5% is more likely. Right, I've got another question from Entirely Fictional in Midderkinster. And it says, there are loads of TikToks, Instagram books, shiny podcasts that say these foods increase your dopamine in your blood, therefore they're good for ADHD. What's wrong with that? What's the big problem there? Why is that blood dopamine? Why is that an issue? And we talked about this on chat the other day as well, didn't we? We were looking at papers like 3 days ago.
We did. So you're actually, for once, Alex, better at this for me when it comes to biochemistry and neurochemistry. But the first and most obvious thing is that dopamine doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier easily.
Yeah.
And that means you could have a massive increase from cold water exposure, for example, in dopamine levels, but it's not going to get into the brain. It doesn't get in there. It stays in the blood. So there's a big difference between the two.
When we were young, James, they used to say if you eat eggs because they're really high in cholesterol, you'll get high cholesterol. And then quietly somebody realized humans can't take cholesterol and make bodily cholesterol from it. We just can't. We haven't got the enzymes. And it feels a bit like that. So like they quietly got rid of eggs off the list, the banned list. So, and it's a bit like that. The levels of dopamine in your blood do not relate probably don't relate, always have to add probably, to the levels of dopamine in your synapses that we use for ADHD. And it's not dopamine. We might have lower dopamine in the synapses, possibly because there's mutations of channels. But what we know is that the neurons that are activated by dopamine in the brain, that's what is affected in ADHD. We're fairly certain of that bit. To relate that to dopamine levels in the blood from eating stuff is not true. And the most fundamental way we know this is if you take children or adults with ADHD, medicated or not, and compare them to anybody else, the dopamine levels in the blood are all on average the same. So it doesn't mean anything. You eat, and as James said, you eat dopamine. It doesn't put dopamine in your brain. That's not how this works. It's just not how it works. And low dopamine isn't evidenced in ADHD anyway. We use the term sometimes as a shortcut, but we don't literally mean less dopamine. Probably.
No. Exactly.
Well,
somebody asked me.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I know. Somebody asked me, I've forgotten the exact answer, is why don't we use medication for Parkinson's, or which are dopamine mimetics? And I think it's a really good question. I think they've tried them, haven't they? But maybe
I think they're actually fighting it still, aren't they? And it's one of the reasons because the areas of the dopamine activity are different. Is that why? And you have to use a different dopaminergic medication?
I think we need to go away and read about this, because it's a question we haven't been able to answer. James
why would you throw your own fucking hospital pass into you can choose the Jesus?
Alex, my whole life is me giving myself a hospital pass so that I can then get flattered into by Roy Keane and end up with a broken cruciate ligament. That's my life in one football metaphor.
One more, sorry.
Football metaphor.
One football metaphor.
Okay, I'm ending it there. I'm tired. Anyway, that was episode. It has completely perfect. That was episode 178 of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we talked about cognitive flexibility, or a lack of it. If by a miracle you enjoyed this episode, there'll probably be more. We're not sure, but who knows? Anyway, until then, bye-bye.
Bye all. Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon. Big klaxon. No. Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon.
I'm in the beautiful cathedral city of Canterbury, by the way, Alex.
Is that where you are right now?
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. It is nice. Yeah. What do we know? What have you learned about when the cathedral was consecrated and built? Because they take a while, don't they?
I got here at 9 o'clock last night.
So you've only done a couple of hours research on it.